founded 1819, April 1st. Jacob Knauss is my name. I came to America in 1846 and became the second pastor of the Zion Evangelical Church, Evangelisch Kirche. We were German people, German speaking at that time. Our first pastor, John Jacob Rees, started the church in 1835, answering a call to come to America because the Germans didn't have pastors, teachers, or doctors who could speak German, and they felt cut off. So they were meeting in a home, and Rees organized them. They built their first house, the church, and it's gone, but if you take this road and cross over the Freeburg Douglass Road, and you go to the next house, you're going to see a bigger stone monument where the first church stood, with Jacob Rees's name on there. So I'm coming to America in 1846. I went to the same evangelical mission school he did. He intended to be a missionary in South Africa. I intended to be a missionary in India. But again, letters were coming from America, a desperate plea for German-speaking pastors, teachers, and doctors. And I was a pastor and a teacher. So I arrived, and Rees handed off the church to me and said, take over. And so in 1846, I became the second pastor of the Evangelisch Church. I was not considered by very many people to be a good preacher. I was not considered to be a good teacher. I wasn't a good theologian. I didn't have a great command of the Bible. But the people loved me. I was a good pastor. I cared about people. Come on over. I'm telling the story of Reverend John Jacob Rees, Jacob Knauss, who was the second pastor arriving here in 1846. Not a very good preacher, not a very good teacher, but a good pastor. Cared about people. 1849, a cholera epidemic swept through the area, and a lot of children died. And me and my wife were there helping people, caring for people, providing for people, and pulling them together in the worst time of their life. This part of the cemetery began growing at that point, the children's cemetery, as opposed to the adults over here. And so me and my wife were greatly loved by the people because we were a people's pastor, not a great teacher, a theologian, not a clergy pastor, but relating to the people. By 1850, so many Germans had immigrated to the area, and the town of Centerville, now Millstadt, had formed, that we decided we were going to move from the little log cabin to a bigger brick house in the town. And so we built our first brick home, which today is the Millstadt Police Department. And we stayed there for about 13 years. And in 1863, we built our second brick house. The current church, 40 feet wide by 60 feet long, no basement underneath, no educational wing, and no bell tower. We had a little bell sitting on top. And so we built that in 1863. So while I was here, so many Germans were coming to the area, and we moved from a log cabin to a brick home to a bigger brick home, which was used during the week as our schoolhouse as well. It was built during the Civil War, a time when there was a lot of scarcity, but our people had faith in the future. I came as an evangelisch pastor, an evangelical pastor, because in Germany, in 1817, the two Protestant churches were merged together and made the Evangelisch Church. Before then, there's always been the Catholic Church. There was Luther's Lutheran Church starting in 1517, and there was Zwingli and then later Calvin's Reformed Church started at the same time. But the Lutherans and the Reformed disagreed on one thing. They agreed on everything but one thing, and that's what happens when you take communion. What was to bring people together divided them. Luther said, when the Lutheran priest, pastor says, "This is my body," the bread doesn't change. The Catholic Church says the bread changes. But the Lutheran Church says, no, the bread is always bread. But invisibly, Jesus puts his body. And so in a way, you're eating a sandwich. You're eating the bread and Jesus' real body. Though you can't see it, you can't taste it, you can't smell it. Zwingli and Calvin said, no. Jesus said, do this in remembrance of me. We're remembering what he did. But Jesus is there in his spirit, invisible, and he blesses us. So in 1817, on the 300th anniversary, the Prince of Prussia said, we have too many problems. We have the Napoleon Wars continuing. So the French army, the British army, the Russian army passes through our country. We have economic uncertainty, and the Catholics, the Lutherans, and Reformed don't get along. So he said, I don't care how you do it. Today there's no Lutherans and Reformed. Today you're called evangelicals, which means gospel. Your job is to teach the gospel, the good news that God loves and God forgives. If Christians can't love and forgive each other, how can we tell anybody else? So get to your job, tell the gospel. And so I believe that. That was the good news. We're supposed to be brought together. And so that's what we brought to this land, the gospel of Jesus. And so I was here from 1846 to 1866, and after 20 years decided it's time to move on, because after 20 years people needed a new voice. And so the third pastor was called Albert Zeller, but he was a great preacher. He was a great theologian and thinker, and after 5 years he wanted to move on to something bigger and better. And the people of the church sent a delegation to me and my wife in Indiana and said, we love you so much, we want you to come back. And we decided, yes, we would come back. And from 1871 to 1881 was the pastor here. But in the winter of 1881, out here during a funeral, I contracted pneumonia, and then 2 weeks later died from pneumonia. So not a brilliant person, but a person of the people, a caring person, which is what I was known for. And so at my funeral, pastors came from Indiana, Missouri, and all around the area to participate. It was, at that time, the largest funeral gathering in the area. Any questions that you can...
Where are you buried? Which one?
Right here. I'm buried here, and right next to me is my wife, Carol Nee Bliss. That was her last name. She lived as the widow for 24 more years, passing away in 1905. At 5 years later, at the 75th anniversary of the church, my son, Jacob, also a pastor in the evangelical church, he dedicated a baptismal font made out of marble to Zion Church in honor of me, his father, and Carolyn, his mother. Still used for baptisms at the church today.
So did your stone shift, or is it purposely at an angle?
It was purposely at an angle. Mm-hmm.